Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the She Knows Pro Football podcast. Once again, I'm Alice, aka the NFL girl. I'm sorry I don't sound like it today. Apparently, I've caught a cold. And once again, I got my good friend Dominick from Fantasy Hot Read with me. Dominick, how you doing tonight?
I'm not doing too bad, Kermit. Hopefully everything, you're healthy by Thanksgiving and, you're able to go out and get some good food.
Hey, that's the plan. That's why I plan on knocking this out these next couple of days. Well, you guys, it's the holiday week. We got Thanksgiving coming on Thursday, which means we got a lot of good games coming up this week, especially on Turkey Day. So let's get started with our 3 Turkey Day matchups. Beginning with, we got the 5-6 Chicago Bears headed to Detroit, of course, to face the 3-7-1 Lions. Dominick, who you got?
Yeah, and this should be the biggest turkey of them all. It's a bad game. We saw that the Lions looked terrible last week in losing to the Redskins of all teams. The Bears look, half decent. Trubisky actually had a rushing touchdown, but they played the Giants, so he can't really take a whole lot of that either. Thanksgiving Day games are always weird, just like most Thursday games are. You never know what's going to happen on the short week, but they're saying there's a chance that Stafford might be back, but I'd also heard that he could possibly be put on injured reserve and be out for the rest of the year, so that's something to really look at. I do expect a big game from David Montgomery this week, as the Lions rush defense is last in the league. With that said, as much as I do like the Lions more than the Bears, I'm going to have to take the Bears in this one.
With questions surrounding whether or not Matthew Stafford is going to be back in time for this game, I have too many trepidations as far as the Lions are concerned. I watched them take that L last week to the Redskins, which was surprising to say the least. But again, with Stafford out, it kind of does change the dynamics of that team. They've got no run game whatsoever going on for them right now. Chicago was, I don't want to say impressive in their win. I'm always impressed that they even get a win half the time. Like you said, Montgomery is finally starting to show something there. Trubisky was able to run for a touchdown. They're a shaky team, and I never know what to expect from them, but I expect more out of them, especially, like I said, with questions still surrounding whether or not Stafford's going to be back. If Stafford is back, that would change what I would decide as the outcome, but since I don't know as of right now, I'm definitely going to take the Bears in this one. Just feel like they got a few more weapons, and after the way they won last week, I really feel like they got something going there. It should be able to bang out a couple of more wins this season, starting with this one. Next up, we got the 8-3 Buffalo Bills headed to Dallas to face the 6-5 Cowboys. Dominick, who you got?
Yeah, the Cowboys didn't look good last week. I mean, I know it was a tough game against the Patriots, number 1 defense in the league, obviously, and the weather was terrible. It was very windy, but Jason Garrett does not know how to coach. It's obvious. It's been obvious for a couple years now, and it looks like Jerry Jones is finally figuring that out as well. Looks like this may be the end of the tenure for him. With that said, I do like how the Bills have been playing lately. I do like Josh Allen. This game, I think, is going to be probably a little more high scoring than people may think. The Bills defense is going to be able to shut down, I think, a little bit of the Cowboys offense. We saw last week that Amari Cooper had 0 catches with Stephon Gilmore on him. This week he's going to have Tre'Davious White on him, and that's going to be another very tough matchup for him. So I think they could shut him down pretty good again. So as much as maybe it's a homer pick, maybe it's not, but I do like the Bills actually in this game.
The Cowboys on Thanksgiving tend to play a little bit better. But that being said, last week they lost a tough battle. I know that I picked them last week. I thought that they had enough of a run game and a scrambling quarterback that they would be able to eke out a win there in New England. They were not able to get that together, even though it was a close match. They didn't get totally blown out. There were some questionable calls that went against them, and I understand that people felt that played a big enough factor. It shouldn't never come down to calls. You should be winning a game sufficiently enough that you don't have to depend on the refs to help you win a game. I'm sorry, that's just how it is, and you're going to have to take an L on that one. The Bills, meanwhile, Josh Allen in the last couple of weeks have looked really good. They're 8-3 right now. They're second in that division. Admittedly, it's a terrible division, but it's quite impressive for them to be playing that well, and it's mainly on that defense, which is a top 5 defense, with Tre'Davious White being one of the big factors there. I like what I'm seeing out of them. Frank Gore becoming 3rd all time in rushing, playing up there in Buffalo for them. Quite an addition, and it's good to see him still out there, still playing, and still, trucking away the yards. Cowboys, like I said, typically tend to play a little bit better at home, tend to play a little bit better on Thanksgiving, but I just feel like you're seeing what you can do against them as far as a defensive battle and how to shut down that run game. And once they are too reliant on that passing game, they don't seem to be able to get it done when they're relying too heavily on Dak to get it done. I really feel like the Bills are going to know how to shut Zeke down and we'll be able to get that win there in Dallas. Next up, we got the 9-2 New Orleans Saints headed to Atlanta to face the 3-8 Falcons. Dominick, who you got?
Yeah, the Falcons went into New Orleans a couple weeks ago and upset them as huge underdogs. They came in last week. And then the week after that, they went to Carolina and blew out Carolina. So we expected them to do good things against the Buccaneers last week, and they looked like trash last week. This week, I think the Saints are going to come in with a renewed vigor, especially after having that loss a couple weeks ago. Their defense is still playing good. Hopefully, Marcus Lattimore will be back for this game. But either way, I do think the Saints have way too much firepower for Atlanta. Their defense is good enough to hold most of what Atlanta has down. I mean, nobody's going to stop Julio Jones as long as he's healthy, but they really don't have a running game anymore. Brian Hill's shown that he really hasn't done anything since Devontae Freeman's been out. Ridley had a disappointing game. Gage is doing all right, but he's still, not good enough to be the be-all, end-all or to make the difference. So I do think the Saints are going to win this game by probably double-digit points.
The loss of Devonta Freeman really hurt Atlanta, but I feel like the bigger loss for them was the loss of Austin Hooper, because that was really Matt Ryan's go-to person more than it was Julio Jones or Calvin Ridley this season. He really was getting it to Hooper, and now with Hooper out and no set date on when or if he's going to return, I heard that there was some possibility that he was going to come back this week. That's now changed, and therefore, they are going to have to rely again on Calvin Ridley, who, like you said, didn't do anything last week, on Julio Jones, who did look pretty decent or whatever. Their running game really not getting off the ground. It's been really disappointing to see that. The Saints, meanwhile, Saints are pissed that they lost to the Falcons at home just a few weeks ago. And they're going to be fired up and ready to make sure that they do not lose both matchups this season. They're going to be ready to come in and take this one back from the Falcons so that they can at least split the season as opposed to losing both matchups. New Orleans has way too many weapons. They got one of the better kickers in the league. They got one of the best quarterbacks in the league. I love what they have at the running game, especially since Kamara's come back healthy. Even when he's been out, they've had Latavius Murray back there. This is a really solid, and Michael Thomas, he's in some talks for MVP, though it would be hard for him to beat out any of the quarterbacks that are in the running, but he is in talks for that because he's had such a great season so far. So I absolutely think New Orleans is not going to allow themselves to go 0-2 against the Falcons this year. I'm definitely giving this one to the Saints here. And headed into Sunday, our first matchup is the 4-7 New York Jets headed to, good Lord, Cincinnati to face the winless 0-11 Bengals. Dominic, let's talk about this one fast.
Yeah, the Jets are actually looking good. They put up 34 points in each of the last three games. That we saw after the bye week that Cincinnati went away from Andy Dalton to Ryan Finley to see what they had in him. They saw enough. They've gone back to Andy Dalton for this game, which I think is going to be good for the Bengals. It looks like they are trying to at least get one win this year. This may be the game that they look to get it in, but I don't think it's going to happen. I just think that Sam Darnold is actually playing very good right now. Robbie Anderson should have a good game. Le'Veon Bell, if he doesn't do something on this game, then I don't know what's wrong with him. But I do like the Jets in this game to win.
The Bengals sent a message to Dalton that they are ready to move on. And unfortunately for them, what they were ready to move on to in Finley is not ready for primetime television. He's just not quite up to snuff. Maybe in the offseason, maybe come draft time, they'll look into either getting one of these free agent quarterbacks or maybe drafting a quarterback. Who knows? Dalton, potentially, this may be his last season. And maybe this is the game that he finally, steps it up to try and prove that he isn't done, at least in the league. Maybe he's done playing in Cincinnati, but he's not done in the league. And hopefully he can get some help from his receivers this week. The main person that had been helping Finley for a while there was Tate, but I don't know how that's going to affect anything. The Jets, meanwhile, like you said, in the last couple of weeks have looked really good. I've been impressed by what Sam Darnold has been able to put together. Their running game behind Le'Veon Bell's been pretty decent. Robbie Anderson looks good. So as much as I think the Bengals are going to get a win this season, I personally think it'll be against the Browns. I know that's sad to say, but I just do not think it's going to be against these Jets because the Jets just have looked more impressive and they've got a pretty decent defense and should be able to shut down what little game that the Bengals are be able to put together. So I definitely taking the Jets in this game. Next up, we got the 6-5 Tennessee Titans headed to Indianapolis to face the 6-5 Colts. Dominic, who you got?
Yeah, this should be a good game. It's a division game. Obviously, both these teams are fighting for a division, right? One game behind Houston, who has a tough game this week as well. Tennessee last week had a great game. Derrick Henry had an awesome game. Ryan Tannehill had a great game as well. 2 passing touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns going into this game. Though I think that being that it's in Indianapolis, I think the defense is going to play a little bit better for the Colts than they got out of Jacksonville last week in Tennessee. Brissett should have a better game this week than he did last week. And I do think that it's going to be a very close game. And this one could be a high-scoring game as well, which you don't expect a lot out of Tennessee usually. But I do think that the Colts are going to be able to pull this one out very, very lightly, maybe by 1 point or 2 points.
So I was a little bit more confident in the Colts last week, and they ended up losing. Not only did they end up losing, then Eric Ebron is done for the season. They've placed him on the IR, and that to me is significant because that's been one of Jacoby Brissett, go-to shutdown players this season. And with T.Y. Hilton, in particular because T.Y. Hilton has been in and out with injury. So that is significant for me on what I think that the Colts can do with the loss of Ebron there. Even though their run game has been okay, and Jacoby's have been pretty good about being able to at least run and scramble and get the first down. Titans, meanwhile, that switch for them to go to Tannehill and move away from Mariota has actually worked out quite well in their favor. They actually have gone to their running game more, which was one of the things that I kept complaining about. You've got Derrick Henry. This dude is 6'5", is like 260 pounds. There's no reason why you shouldn't be running him more, and they have. And what has happened is that they've been able to get more scoring, more touchdowns, more yardage. He's a great player. He's a big dude, and he's hard to bring down. As much as I would like to pick the Colts because I really do like Jacoby Brissett, I really have an issue with the loss of Ebron. I just feel like that's going to be something significant for them to try and have to overcome. And like I said, with T.Y. Hilton having been in and out, with him struggling with injuries, just don't know what's going to happen with this team for the rest of the season. I'm taking the Titans in this game. Just feel like that they've got enough offensive weapons and enough players on that defense to be able to get this. It's going to be a dogfight. It's going to be a close match, but I feel like the Titans are going to be able to pull this one out. Next up, we got the 5-6 Philadelphia Eagles headed to Miami to face the 2-9 Dolphins. Dominic, who you got?
Yeah, this one, again, like I said with Cleveland last week, it's tough to, pick a team that's this bad, and the Eagles are a pretty bad team. They're favored by 10 right now in this game, which is tough to see. I don't think they're going to play as well on the road. We don't know if Alshon Jeffrey is going to be back. It's likely that he will be, but they don't know for sure yet. We don't know if Lane Johnson is going to be back. Jordan Howard may not be back either. Obviously, Nelson Aguilar may not be back. That's not really a real big deal because, Greg Ward's just as good. But, hopefully Brandon Brooks can make it back from this game. It was tough to see him have to go out with anxiety and everything, and that's definitely a serious issue. So hopefully he's able to come back for this one. But the surrounding Wentz, there really is nothing left anymore other than Ertz and Goddard, who both had good games last week, but they still lost that game last week. Their offense is doing nothing right now. Luckily, their defense is playing lights out. They're probably playing behind the Patriots. Maybe they're playing the best defense in the league right now. So I think they've been giving us a few points, even though they're not scoring any either. So I do think the Eagles are going to win this game, but I don't think it's going to be a high-scoring game, and I think Ryan Fitzpatrick could get you a couple touchdowns in this game.
This is going to be an ugly matchup. This is going to be a really, really ugly matchup. These are two bad teams. Philly is worse, more based on the fact that they've lost so many players to injury. It got to the point where they had to finally re-sign Jay Ajayi to come in at running back because they lost so many running backs and didn't have a running game going anymore. The fact that we don't know for sure who's going to be back there at receiver for them, whether or not we're going to have everybody back healthy or not, is a big issue for them. Like you said, Zach Ertz, Dallas Goedert, okay, that's fine, but those are your tight ends, and they're more short yardage receivers than they are, your deep ball threats. So I'm not real sure what they're going to do. Hopefully in a couple of weeks, some people will come back healthy, but right now, going into this game, I have question marks surrounding them. Fortunately for them, they're facing the Dolphins. The Dolphins actually, even in their losses, have played pretty well. I'm seeing something now out of Gesicki, which I didn't even know who the heck he was, but he's looked good in them, and I kind of feel bad I didn't pick him up when he was available because he's actually looked, pretty good in these last couple of weeks, especially last week. So it's good to see Ryan Fitzpatrick have a connection with someone there, considering that they haven't had much of a run game so far this season. Philly has a much better defense. They should be able to pick off Ryan Fitzpatrick at least once or twice because that's just how Ryan Fitzpatrick is. It's going to be an ugly fight, mainly because Eagles are struggling with injuries. I'm like you, though. I have to give it to the Eagles. I feel like they got just enough weapons and just enough defense to be able to pull out a win here, but expected to be more or less probably a field goal battle as opposed to, these two teams being able to score lots of touchdowns.
Yeah, and everybody loves the revenge game narrative this year. That's like the it phrase. So I don't know if it's the Jay Ajayi revenge narrative or if it's the Super Bowl rematch narrative, because I don't remember which. I don't think either team won, but if you remember that great documentary Ace Ventura, these are the two teams that were playing in the Super Bowl in that, and I'm assuming that since Dan Marino came back after halftime, he led them to the victory, so that's another Eagles revenge game.
Hey, and maybe that's what we're going to see here in this game. That'll be an interesting one. And like you said, we just saw what happened the last time Miami had to face somebody coming in for revenge. They took a bad whooping, so that might be a repeat of that. Next up, we got the 8-3 Green Bay Packers headed to New York to face the 2-9 Giants. Dominic, who you got?
Yeah, Green Bay does not play nearly as well on the road as they do at home. We've seen that last week against San Francisco where they got trounced. We saw that against the Chargers where they got trounced. This is going to be a tough game because they're going basically all the way across the country, because they played in San Francisco on Sunday night. Now they're going all the way across to play here in New York. That being said, the line is 6.5. I don't know if they're going to cover the 6.5. Their defense has not been playing as good, but the Giants defense is so bad that I think Aaron Rodgers is going to light them up. I think Aaron Jones is going to have a great game as well. And Devontae Adams, you're going to start all three of your stars here. And I do think that Green Bay is going to win this game and get back on track and stay, at least with the Minnesota Vikings.
We were hyping the hell out of Danny Dimes early in the season, and this team is now 2-9, so I think we can kind of let go of that narrative. Saquon is doing the best he can, trying to salvage what he can for this team, but they're just not a good team. In particular, more on that defense than on the offense, but they're just not a good team. The Packers are going to come in pissed. They just got mollywopped last week, and they don't play well on the West Coast. So I'm kind of giving that to the fact that they were back out on the West Coast. They lost to the Chargers, and they lost to the 49ers because they were out on the West Coast, and they just don't do well. I understand they're coming back across the country, but I feel like they do a little bit better in the Midwest and on the East Coast. Don't know why, but that just seems to be a thing with them. I feel like that this game, after that trouncing they took last week, they're going to be ready to come in here fired up and to get this win, and they're definitely going to beat the Giants. There's just no competition on how much better the Packers can play, and he's got much better receivers and weapons. So definitely giving this one to Green Bay. Just feel like they're ready to make up for last week's crushing defeat.
Yeah, I think when Aaron Rodgers gets within 250 miles of his family, he just doesn't play well.
I got to agree with you there. I don't know what that is, but yeah. Next up, we got the 5-6 Cleveland Browns headed to Pittsburgh for the bloody rematch against the 6-5 Steelers. Dominic, who you got?
Yeah, the Steelers are going to start Duck Hodges in this game, and I think the Cleveland Browns defense is going to go duck hunting. This is going to be like you said, it's going to be a bloodbath in this one. I think it's going to be very physical. We know that these teams don't like each other even before a couple weeks ago. Now it's really gotten bad. Obviously, Myles Garrett's not going to be there, which is good. He shouldn't be there. And obviously, Mason Rudolph's not there just because he shouldn't be there either, but for different reasons, he just sucks. So they do bring in Duck Hodges, who actually has a better passer rating this year than Tom Brady, which obviously, as everybody on Twitter saying, means that he's better than Tom Brady. But in this game, I think Juju Smith-Schuster could be back, but he's having a down year. We'll see if James Washington gets anything going. The Browns have actually been getting things going the past couple weeks. I know this is a revenge game for Pittsburgh, as they not only was with the end of that game, but also the fact that they got, pretty much beat up in that game as well. But I do think that Cleveland's going to be able to come in this game. Baker Mayfield's playing better. I don't think he's going to have a great game this week because the Pittsburgh defense is outstanding. But I think Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt especially are going to do a lot of work in this game, and I think it's going to get them the win.
This is two teams that cannot stand each other. And the last matchup was, the culmination of that they really went at each other. I expect a lot of revenge in this game. It is not going to be pretty. It is going to be nasty. I expect damn near fist fights in this game. It's going to be a rough battle. That being said, like you said, Duck Hodges is going to get the start in this game. And that's just because Mason Rudolph just hasn't been playing up to snuff. I know, again, that's another one of these quarterbacks that we hyped up because he had a couple of good games, but that mainly fell on the fact that he had a good running game with James Conner, and it kind of hid some of the flaws that he had in his game. Now that they're relying more heavily on that passing game, it became obvious in particular last week that he is not up to par, and they brought in Duck into the game. They still, were able to get a win and everything, and you saw some of what we expected out of Juju this season. Browns come in after that. Wow, a very impressive win, but again, that was over the Dolphins. So, you got to kind of take that into play. But you did finally see Baker being able to connect with OBJ, which we kind of been waiting for. You saw him connecting with Jarvis. The main thing for them, though, has been that run game. I didn't know the addition of Kareem Hunt would make that much of a difference, but it really has, because there were question marks on whether or not him being out the first freaking 8 games of the season and pretty much out the entire season last year. The man's been gone out of football for over a year. No one expected what they're seeing out of him, that 1-2 punch of him and Chubb back there, have this type of impact on that team. They're now sitting at 5-6. They're still in playoff contention at this point because, I mean, they're in a terrible division, but they're still in that race. If they get this win this week and, are tied with the Steelers, this could change everything. Really feel like the Browns are now starting to click on that offense. Their defense was already good. Even with Myles Garrett out, it looked impressive last week. Again, I am staying that same, knowing that they were facing the Dolphins last week. Steelers, meanwhile, they have a great defense. Again, this is going to be a super defensive battle. Don't expect it to be very high scoring. Expect both of them to throw some picks in this game, but I do expect that the Browns are going to be able to get the win. And I don't think the Steelers will be able to split this season. I just really feel like the Browns are going to be able to get in there and get this win, and both of them be at 500 at 6-6 by the end of the day. Next up, we got the 2-9 Washington Redskins headed to Carolina to face the 5-6 Panthers. Dominick, who you got?
Yeah, this is actually the biggest spread of the week. The Washington's underdogs by 10 points. They're coming off a big win against Detroit last week at home. Carolina's coming off if you want to say, respectful loss, last-second loss against the Saints in their first home game after the debacle to Atlanta. So it was good to see the Saints get back on track. It was good to see Carolina actually get back after they had a terrible game against Atlanta the week before. This week, I think it's kind of like a little overreaction that Carolina looked so good and the Washington did, so they don't really know what to do here. I do think this line is overinflated. I do think Carolina is going to win this game, but I think it'll probably be by somewhere between 3 and 7 points.
People are overhyping that Redskins win. I mean, it was against Detroit. Let's just calm down a minute, okay? It was against a terrible team who didn't have their starting quarterback going. So everybody just, take a chill. Understand that it made Haskins look good because he finally got a win as a rookie, and yay, good for him. Again, consider your competition and consider the fact that they were without their starting quarterback. That's not going to be the case here in Carolina because they will still have Kyle Allen. Kyle Allen is another one of these quarterbacks who who started out looking impressive and was being hyped as the future of Carolina, and now is kind of falling back down to earth, and he's an okay quarterback. He's not great, but he's not terrible. The thing that's really been saving Carolina is Christian McCaffrey. I keep saying that every single week. It's absolutely Christian McCaffrey because he's able to open up the field. He's not only a dog that can run it down the field, he's a pass catching running back. So he can really open up that run game, give you the run pass option. He's a great running back. I hope that he wins MVP. I don't know that it's going to happen. That shouldn't all fall on him because the team is only so this season. DJ Moore finally actually looked decent last week. I feel bad because I had already dropped them at this point, but whatever. Redskins, the connection between McLaurin and Haskins has helped them at times. It did help them last week. Let's see what happens this particular week. I know they're going to go in there. I don't expect it. Like you said, it's a 10 point, it's 10 points that they're being predicted, but I don't feel like it's going to be nowhere near close to that. I feel like it's going to be a close game, but I do expect Carolina to get the win. They lost last week. They're ready. They're going to be ready and fired up. They're not trying to be that far out of the race to be in playoff contention. And so they kind of need this one. So I really feel like they're going to be fired up and ready to get it so they can still stay in that discussion. Next up, we got the 4-7 Tampa Bay Buccaneers headed to Jacksonville to face the 4-7 Jaguars. Dominick, who you got?
Yeah, I think the Buccaneers are the better team here. Their quarterback is better. Unfortunately, Winston's not a great quarterback, but he's playing better than Foles is right now. Obviously, their receiving core is better. The only place that the Jaguars have any kind of advantage on the offense is with Leonard Fournette in the running game. And Tampa Bay has been very good against the running back this year. They're top 10 in the league. I believe they're 6th right now in the league in, yards given up to the running back. With that being said, I don't think Fournette's going to have the same type of game that he did last week against Tennessee when he finally got 2 touchdowns after a long dry spell of not having any touchdowns. Nick Foles hasn't been doing great, as I said. We know that the Buccaneers' pass defense is atrocious, but I do think that the Buccaneers are going to be able to outscore Jacksonville. Jacksonville looks like they've pretty much given up, and they should. They're out of it right now. I think they're the only team in the South that really doesn't have a shot here. I do like Tampa Bay to go into Jacksonville and win this game with a big game from probably Mike Evans and Chris Godwin.
Like you said, the main thing in this is that Tampa Bay has much better weapons on that offense other than the run game. I really like Leonard Fournette, and I've liked what he's been able to do this season. But the problem is that he doesn't have there's no good receiving core there, and it doesn't have the best quarterback. So depending all on Leonard Fournette has kind of sucked for them this season. That's obvious by their 4-7 record in that AFC South division, which isn't a terrible division, but isn't that great. I mean, the team leading the division is 7-2. 7-4. They shouldn't be this far out of the contention, but they just don't have the type of receiving core that they need to be able to stay competitive in that division. Tampa, meanwhile, he's got two of the best receivers in the league. My goodness, I ended up having to face both of them last week, and I cannot tell you how many points I lost by last week because it was so ridiculous. But let's just say Chris Godwin and Mike Evans together are an unstoppable force, and yeah, that it got very messy last week for me. Jameis Winston, he has, like I said, he's inconsistent, but when he's on, he's really on. When he's off, he's really off, but when he's on, he's really on. And I feel like against the Jaguars, he's going to have an on game. He might throw a pick in this game. He threw picks last week. You just got to know that that's part of what it is when you have him as your quarterback. But he's going to be able to get enough yardage and get enough plays downfield and get that ball to Mike Evans and Chris Godwin to be able to pull out a win here. Even with that inconsistency that they have at that run game, it doesn't matter when you have deep ball threats like Mike Evans and Chris Godwin that you have a run game that can't get more than 2 or 3 yards a pop. That being said, I'm definitely taking the Buccaneers here. Just don't feel like the Jaguars have enough weapons. I don't know what the future holds for Foles there with that $88 million contract. Hopefully, maybe they can get some receivers this offseason and to, help him out, and maybe they'll be more impressive next season. But this season, for me, I feel like is a wash for them, and I do expect the Buccaneers to be able to pull off a win in this game. Next up, we got the 10-1 San Francisco 49ers headed to Baltimore to face the 9-2 Ravens. Dominic, who you got?
Yeah, talk about the unstoppable force. We have the unstoppable force here of Lamar Jackson against the immovable object of the San Francisco 49ers defense. This should be an amazing battle. I do think that Jackson is just playing out his mind right now. Obviously, he had 5 touchdowns yesterday. He was at halftime, I think he was like 9 for 9 passing for like 165 yards. And, it was just, and like 3 or 4 touchdowns. It was just amazing to see about or read about and everything. Obviously, the San Francisco defense is much, much better than the Rams defense has been this year. But coming all the way across the country, I think it's going to be a little tough for them. We'll have to see. Tevin Coleman really hasn't been doing a whole lot lately. He was doing some good things earlier in the year when he came back, but now he's been kind of struggling. We saw Kittle come back in this game and have a great game including a 61-yard touchdown from Jimmy Garoppolo, who had 2 touchdowns in this game. The defense for Baltimore, I think, is playing out of their minds as well. They're playing almost just as good as the 49ers defense is right now. And I think with the Baltimore offense playing to the level that they are, they're probably the best offense in the league right now. And their defense playing at a top 3 to 5 level in the league. I do think that they're going to, even though San Francisco has the better record, I think that Baltimore's the better team right now, and I think they're going to show it in this game.
This game right here, not only is the game of the week, I feel, but this might be a Super Bowl preview. I know that's saying a lot, but you got to see how well these two teams are playing right now. My goodness. Lamar Jackson in that Monday night matchup, it just, I don't even want to call it a matchup. That beatdown that they put on the Rams was just crazy ridiculous. He looked so impressive. He's in the MVP discussion. He absolutely should be. He's playing out of his mind right now. He's got Mark Ingram in that backfield, which has really helped him tremendously this season. Now that he has a consistent run game there, that defense is playing in the top 10, but possibly even in the top 5. They are, my goodness, they are playing lights out. San Francisco, meanwhile, you're right, they have the better record. Mainly that falls on that. 1, it falls on the fact that they're in a division that's only so-so at best. And 2, it falls on the fact that defense is playing completely lights out. They have probably one of the top defenses in the entire league. They've been playing damn good, mainly behind Nick Bosa. That child is going to win Defensive Rookie of the Year, if not Defensive Player of the Year, by how well he's been playing this season. I'm thoroughly impressed by them, not so much on their offense, even though I have to say the addition, again, I know I just said it when it happened, but I have to say it again, especially after the way they played this past week. The addition of Manuel Sanders for Jimmy Garoppolo has been a damn good addition for them, and he's been playing very impressive and very well for that team. Think that was a perfect move on their part. It has worked out very well for them, and it has helped them to propel them every single week. They've looked better and better. They're now 10-1. They're coming, like you said, coming across the country, making that west to east trip. I can tell you from personal experience, it's brutal. That is hard on the body. It takes you a few days to, get it together and to really feel up to 100%. Feel like that this is going to be a grinded out game because these are two really, really good defenses, but I really feel like Baltimore has the better offense. However, Now, that being said, it's hard for me to pick against the 49ers. Every time I picked against the 49ers, they turn around and won. So I don't know which way to go here. I'm more confident in the Ravens offense, even though I'd say their defenses, even though I'd say that the 49ers have a slightly better defense. Do not expect this to be a blowout game on either team's part. So I'm going to give it to the Ravens. They're at home. I really feel like that this might be the game where they're able to show just how good and how solid this team really is, because this is probably going to be one of the best teams they face. And that's saying that even facing the New England Patriots, this is going to be, like I said, this could end up being a Super Bowl preview, and I'm really excited for this game. This is going to be the game of the week, giving it to the Ravens. Next up, we got the 6-5 Los Angeles Rams headed to Arizona to face the 3-7-1 Cardinals. Dominic, who you got?
Yeah, the records are obviously far apart, but these teams' trajectories are also far apart, where Arizona is getting better as the season goes on. The Rams seem to be getting worse. Jared Goff seems to be getting worse, and he's on the road in this game, which is another bad sign. Kyler Murray's been playing a lot better. Larry Fitzgerald hasn't been doing a whole lot, but he's still one of the best ever, and he's still able to make some plays. Christian Kirk has been doing good. We don't know if it's going to be Kenyon Drake in this game or who it's going to be. They do say that Chase Edmonds will be back for this game. We don't know about David Johnson. We'll see what happens with those, but I do think that the offensive firepower of the Cardinals does have enough to carry them in this game. And with Jared Goff, again, playing terrible lately and being on the road, I am going to take the Cardinals to beat the Rams in this division matchup.
As you said, the Rams have been playing terrible lately. They started out with so much promise. All of that has gone away. I can't even tell you why. It's not like everybody's been out with injuries. He's still got his receivers there. It's just he's not able to get them to his receivers. I don't understand it. It's not like Cooper Kupp has been out, it's all these games or whatever. It's all on Goff and how poorly he's played, and it's on Todd Gurley on what's going on as far as that knee is concerned, because they're not playing him heavily, and there's question marks as to why. Is it because he's not 100% healthy and they're not being fully honest with people about that? Is it because they're trying to conserve him? Is it because they end up falling so far behind because Goff keeps throwing interceptions? There's so many questions with this team as to what's going on. The defense, their biggest acquisition was bringing in Jalen Ramsey, and so far that hasn't looked like the best decision. It did one week, and then these last couple of weeks it's only looked like So we'll see what happens there and what happens going forward. I just don't have a lot of faith or confidence in them anymore. Kyler Murray has starting to look impressive. Him there with Cliff Kingsbury, I kind of felt like they kind of cheated Wilkes and not giving him a second season to be able to prove himself. But now seeing Kingsbury with Kyler Murray, I really do feel like that was a better move on their part. And I like seeing those two working together. Their running game, David Johnson hasn't been healthy this season, and that kind of sucks. The addition of Kenyon Drake was a good move on their part. Whether or not he's going to be the feature back this week or whether or not they're going to have Edmonds as a feature back doesn't really matter. I feel like they may choose to go by committee and to conserve Edmonds a little bit, especially since in the games when he started, Kenyon Drake has looked impressive. I want to pick the Rams, not just because I have Jared Goff and Todd Gurley, but also because I feel like they need a win more desperately than the Cardinals. The Cardinals aren't expected to be a great team this season. They're supposed to be in a rebuilding mode with a new coach and a new quarterback. Even though he's had great chemistry with Christian Kirk and with Larry Fitzgerald, the questions with the health at their running back has kind of been an issue for them. Defense hasn't been the greatest this particular season, which is disappointing to see, considering that it was thought that, when Patrick Peterson came back, they would really be able to turn things around, and that didn't come into fruition. Yeah, I think for me, I'm going to take the Rams in this one. I just feel like that they need the win more than the Cardinals do, and I really feel like after that mollywhopping they took last week, they're going to be fired up to show that they aren't as bad as people are now writing them off to be. Next up, we got the 4-7 Los Angeles Chargers headed to Denver to face the 3-8 Broncos. Dominic, who you got?
Yeah, the Chargers are coming off of their bye week here. We know Phillip Rivers always plays tough, but he doesn't always play the best against Denver. Melvin Gordon's been doing a lot better lately. They still have Austin Eckler. Keenan Allen is still one of the better receivers in the league. I don't think that Denver's as bad as they played last week. I know their run defense is not as bad as they played last week when they gave up 244 rushing yards to the Bills and 426 overall yards to the Bills. That said, I do think that the Chargers do have enough in this game. Neither of these teams are in playoff contention, so the only thing they have to play for is pride of not finishing last in the division. I do think the Chargers are going to come out on top in this one.
Denver is a terrible team, and I say that as a Broncos fan, and I know I said that last week, and more than likely I'm going to end up saying that again next week. They're just a terrible, terrible, terrible team. Whatever they expected to get out of Flacco when they brought him in never came into fruition. Whatever they expected to get out of, switching to the rookie and expecting bigger and better things, that didn't come to fruition. God, I can't even tell you how disappointing it is. They did Emmanuel Sanders a favor in getting him out of there. He's actually paying for a team that is in playoff contention, which the Broncos are nowhere close to. I'd be shocked if they get any more wins this season, just how bad they've been playing. They really looked terrible last week against the Bills defense. And this is supposed to be a defense that's supposed to have been in the top 15. I doubt they're even in the top 20 at this point. They're just so bad. My goodness. The Chargers, like you said, are coming in off a bye. They're going to be well rested and refreshed. He's still got Keenan Allen. They've been doing a 1-2 punch with Melvin Gordon and Austin Eckler. Phillip Rivers hasn't looked great these last couple of weeks, but they're going up to Denver. They got snow there in Denver. So Chargers got to be ready that it's going to be cold. It's going to be snowy. It's in the outdoor field. So weather's going to be partially a factor, but I just feel like the Chargers just have a little bit more going for them on offense. Maybe not necessarily on defense, but definitely on offense. They have a few more weapons that have been playing a little bit better. So definitely giving it to the Chargers. Do not have good expectations for the Broncos for the rest of this season, and don't know when they'll get another win, but I don't think it's going to be this week. Next up, we got the 6-5 Oakland Raiders headed to Kansas City to face the 7-4 Chiefs. Dominick, who you got?
Yeah, you never bet against Andy Reid coming off a bye week. I think he's like 14-1 coming off a bye week or something like that. That said as well, the Raiders looked terrible, absolutely terrible last week against the Jets. Yes, they have a winning record at 6-5, but they actually have a negative 80 point differential. They've actually scored 80 less points than they've given up, which is because when they do lose, they lose big. And I think they're going to lose big in this game with Patrick Mahomes coming back after a bye week and after his worst game ever as a pro, his worst whole game other than his game where he got injured. He's going to be upset. Tyreek Hill hopefully will be back for this game. They're not positive yet. Hopefully they'll have Damian Williams for this game. If not, look for a big game out of Shady McCoy. But I do think that the Chiefs are going to take care of the Raiders in this one.
Raiders looked so atrocious last week. It was ridiculous. I mean, I never expected them to play that poorly, especially considering who they were playing. So I think that they're going to be, especially the way Gruden was towards the media, that it's going to be that they are going to be fired up to face the Chiefs. I expect them to play, and it's a division rival. I expect them to play a much better game than they did against the Jets last week. That being said, Chiefs are coming in off a bye. They're going to be well rested and refreshed. Whether or not Damian Williams is back or not, whether or not Tyreek Hill is back or not, this team is going to be ready. They're trying to make a playoff push. Not only are they trying to win this division and win it soundly, they are trying to make a real big playoff run. And they don't need to lose to these little rinky-dink teams in the AFC West division. They're not going to lose to the Raiders. They're definitely going to get the win here. Expect a really good game out of Patrick Mahomes in this particular game because, like I said, he's going to be well rested and refreshed. And Andy Reid's record coming in off a bye is hella impressive. They're playing there in Arrowhead, and they play a whole nother level game when they play in that stadium. It is hard to beat them there in Arrowhead. So I definitely am giving this one to the Chiefs and expect it to be a runaway win for them. Next up, we got the 10-1 New England Patriots headed to Houston to face the 7-4 Texans. Dominick, who you got?
Yeah, Deshaun Watson is one of the best quarterbacks in the league right now. Obviously, Russell Wilson and Lamar Jackson have pulled away in the MVP race, but he's still right up there. He's having a great year. Carlos Hyde has been doing good things for them, surprisingly. They've been getting their other running back involved, Duke Johnson, as well, but this is really Carlos Hyde there, and obviously they have DeAndre Hopkins there. The Patriots defense is just playing out of this world right now. We know that Houston, for some reason, no matter how good Houston is, they never play the Patriots very well. They've been blown out a couple of times by them when they were supposed to be in it, and they haven't been. I think that Tom Brady's going to get back on track this week against the Houston defense. Edelman, hopefully he's a little bit healthier. He wasn't really healthy last week. Sony Michel got involved last week, which is good to see in that bad weather. So I do think that the Patriots are going to go down to Texas and beat the Houston Texans.
I like the Texans. I like the Texans even in this game. Deshaun Watson has been playing well. The problem is he still has a terrible offensive line, and in some cases that has cost him dearly because he ends up on his back a lot. He has good receivers there. Their running game has been inconsistent. Even though I did like the addition of Carlos Hyde there, I expect good things out of him going forward. Hopefully he stays there in Houston. And, when Houston is all healthy and all playing well, it's a really, really good team in there and a hard one to beat, in particular there in Houston. That being said, the New England Patriots are 10-1 for a reason. And that reason has nothing at all to do with Tom Brady and his receiving core. It has everything to do with that defense. This is the number one ranked defense in the league. And the reason for that is just how well they can shut down your top receivers. Do not, even if Edelman is back fully healthy, don't expect a big game out of him. But that being said, if so long as that defense is playing the way that they've been playing, it doesn't matter if Edelman isn't playing fully up to snuff. Tom Brady hasn't been putting up the same kind of numbers he hasn't in previous seasons. Again, doesn't matter because that defense has been able to shut down all the top receivers in the league. Expect good things out of them this particular week. I expect them to be able to shut down Nuke down there, who's only had a so-so season at best. And I really expect them to be able to shut him down, especially if they put Stephen Gilmore on him. That's a wrap. You will not see anything out of Nuke this particular week. So I'm definitely going to have to give it to the Patriots, even though, like I said, that offense is only so-so at best, but that defense is so good it doesn't even matter. That defense has been carrying him this season, is going to carry him through this game. Definitely giving this one to the Patriots. And last up, we got the 8-3 Minnesota Vikings headed to Seattle to face the 9-2 Seahawks. Dominic, who you got?
Yeah, these are two very, very good teams. Obviously, as we talked about with Green Bay, Minnesota has to win this game to keep up with Green Bay. They'd still be technically one back because Green Bay beat him earlier in the year. Russell Wilson hasn't had the two best weeks of his career, but he's done enough to get it done. That's just the way he is. Chris Carson had a terrible week last week, but I do think he's going to have a comeback this week. Tyler Lockett had the leg injury that really kept him from doing much of anything on Sunday. He only had 1 for 38 against the Eagles. But in this game, I think he's going to be able to do more against the Vikings defense, who, as they're known for being good, but Xavier Rose is not playing good at all this year. He's pretty much fallen off a cliff here at the age of 29. Dalvin Cook, on the other hand, is doing amazing right now. They should have Adam Thielen back in this game, and hopefully Stephon Diggs does something. We know Kirk Cousins isn't really good playing in primetime. I don't know if he really doesn't like playing in primetime or what it is, but there is something about that. But I don't think Seattle has been playing that great this year. I know they're 9-2, and they are the only team to beat the 49ers, but I think their record's not really a mirage. It just doesn't show that how they've actually been playing. They've been playing a lot of close games. They've been lucky to win a lot of these games by like a field goal or coming back against Tampa Bay and everything. So I do think that Minnesota's better than Tampa Bay. Obviously, Minnesota's better than the Rams, the teams they came back against. So I think Minnesota's going to be able to get out and jump on top of them in this one, and they're not going to be able to come back, and I do think Minnesota's going to win it.
Seattle playing there with the 12s up in Seattle is always a really good game. They're quite impressive. It's one of the loudest stadiums of all stadiums to play in, and they play a hell of a different game there in Seattle. Russell Wilson is still in contention, is still in the race for MVP, and it's mainly because he has been able to carry that team like nobody else. He was able to take DK Metcalf, who had somewhat of a fumbling issue, and turn him into a quality receiver there for him. The run game, like you said, Carson had a fall-off game, but suddenly there was Rashad Penny. They always find weapons. They always find a way to get wins, even when people go down and aren't healthy, and a lot of that falls on Russell Wilson. Defense hasn't been quite as stout as it's been in the past, but again, they've only had 2 losses. So they're doing enough to get it done, and mainly it's because they know how to battle back even when they're down. Minnesota, 8-3, gonna have Thielen back. Stephon Diggs should have a bigger game than what he's been having these last couple of weeks. Dalvin Cook is still in contention as one of the top running backs in the league. This is a good, stout offense. Kirk Cousins is always a question mark. In particular, like you said, in prime time, their defense hasn't lived up to snuff, not quite as well as people thought that they would be, but they're still within the top 15. So that being said, this should be a really, really good game. It should be, on paper, looks like it'll be a lot closer to what people might be anticipating. I just expect a really good battle out of these two teams, but I got to give it to Seattle. They're playing there at home. They have the 12s there behind them. They play a whole different level game. Even with that stout running game of Minnesota, which the Seattle can't compete with, still feel like Russell is going to be able to carry them to victory at the end of the day. So definitely giving this one to the Seahawks. Well, that's all our matchups for the week. Dominic, give me a survivor pool pick for this week.
Yeah, I'll give you 2 of them that I like this week. Obviously, if you haven't used the Eagles, you're going to have to use anybody against the Dolphins right now. So you can use the Eagles, although that's a little tough. And I think another team that you can use I think you can use Carolina against Washington. I think Washington's going to have a major letdown after last week.
Listen, as much as it pains me to say it, I'm going to tell you to take the Chargers over Denver, even though they're playing in that weather, and Chargers aren't the best cold weather team. But I just feel like that they're coming in off the bye. They're going to be well rested and refreshed. And Denver has nothing to compete with when it comes to that run game with Melvin Gordon and Austin Eckler that the Chargers have. So definitely, I would tell you, if you haven't already used them, take the Chargers in this one. And lastly, Dominic, give me one start and one sit for fantasy this week.
Yeah, I'll give you a start on Thursday. I really like David Montgomery in this game against the Lions. The Lions are the 32nd ranked rush defense in the league, so I think that he's not been having a good year. He didn't have a good game last week, but I do think he's set for a game this week. On Sunday, the 31st ranked rush defense is the Miami Dolphins. We don't think Jordan Howard's going to be back in this one. Miles Sanders had a good game last week against a much better Seattle defense. He had about 90 yards for you, and he did the same thing against the Patriots the week before. So I really like Miles Sanders as well in this game. And to sit somebody, as I said, I think they're going to win the game, but I do think it's going to be a defensive struggle. I think they're going to do it in the running game with Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb. So I do not think that Baker Mayfield's going to have a great game on Sunday. So I would sit Baker Mayfield if you have a better option. Like Sam Darnold would be a great play this week.
Those are some great ones, and every time I followed your advice, it's worked out in my favor. So definitely going to listen to you again this week. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's all the time that we have today. Want to thank you all again for listening. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at TheNFLGirl320. Dominic, where can they follow you?
You can follow me on Twitter at EnvisionFF.
You can read more of my thoughts at SheKnowsProFootball.com. Dominic, where can they read your work?
You can read my work at FantasyHotRead.com as well as Razzball.com and Rotoballer.com, and possibly some more coming up soon.
Can't wait to find out where. Well, that's all the time we have, ladies and gentlemen. See you back here next week.